Wednesday, August 1st meeting of the Easthampton City Council. Could I have a roll call, please?
Justin Cobb.
Present?
Donald Psychowski.
Present.
Salem Derby. Dan Hagan.
Present.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Chester Ogilevitz.
Present.
Dan Rist.
Present.
Joy Winnie. Here. Nathan Ziegler.
Present.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous
So
meeting?
moved. Second.
We have a motion on the table to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? Okay, so moved. At this point, where we're at is this is our public speak time. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to step forward to the podium and speak to the council on anything other than what's currently on our public hearing agenda, please do so. Just step forward, state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, communications from elected officials and boards and committees. Council McCoy.
Okay, let me start first. We did get a letter from the Chamber of Commerce, as communication with the City Council. We obviously have a bridge closing coming up, West Street, and to just request that as possible to keep the Chamber aware of any dates so that they can then make their members aware and to help keep business as best we can. Obviously, there's going to be some kind of disruption to business during that project, but in the meantime, as much communication as can happen to keep everyone informed is what the Chamber would like. So we will certainly, as much as our purview allows, we'll make sure that happens. We did have a request from the Planning Board concerning zoning of temporary signs on Pulaski Park, which I believe that will be submitted to probably ordinance. Oh, it's already in? Okay.
Already in ordinance.
Okay. Oh, just a recommendation, which will be taken into consideration for the, that in ordinance, so. That's all our communications so far.
Thank
I
you,
have
Council.
one.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor McCoy. Councilor Psychowski.
As you know, over 2 months ago, I reported to the town sitting at this desk that I approached the Board of Public Works about a discount on a shore right for the outside watering of your house for your gardens, your lawns, and the rest of the stuff. And I give them a mathematical formula. And needless to say, it's been over 2 months and I haven't received a response from the BPW. So it seems like I'll have to saddle up for the next meeting and go in and see what's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other communication? Correspondence from elected officials? That said, mayor communication?
Thank you, Mr. President. Contrary to what your agenda says, I do have a couple of items for you this evening. I believe the city clerk provided them to you ahead of time. The first is a request for an appropriation of $200,000 from the CPA to assist with the development of affordable housing on Cottage Street at the Dye Works project. And the second is the mayor's annual end-of-the-year report for fiscal 2012. That's due within 8 weeks of the close of the fiscal year. And so I was able to complete that today, and so I provided it to you so that it would you'd have it ahead of that 8-week cycle, since you won't meet until September.
Okay.
I know you just received it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or contact me at your convenience.
Any questions for the mayor while he's up there? Okay.
Thank
Seeing none, thank you, Mayor. Reports of standing committees, rules and government relations, Councilor Rist.
Yes, I do have a report this evening. We did meet with the personnel director, the finance director, and members of the insurance commission regarding the acceptance of Chapter 32B, Section 3. We were informed that due to a miscommunication with the city's attorney and the personnel director and the administration, apparently Section 3 has already been approved previously and is not the section pertinent to the discussion regarding health care. They will be submitting, the personnel director will be submitting the correct Chapter 32B sections, which we will be asked to approve. In light of that, the committee voted 3-0 to request that the council remove Chapter 32B, Section 3 request from our agenda without prejudice, and I therefore move that very same item, that the request be removed without prejudice.
Second.
So we have a motion made and seconded to remove the request from the Personnel Director to accept Chapter 30, Section B, Section 3. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? None. Motion passes. Continue, Councilor Rist.
And we will be discussing the administrative code request for the library under public hearings, so I have no more report. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Finance, Councilor Hagan.
I'd like to announce the next meeting of the Finance Subcommittee will be March 22nd at 6 o'clock.
Actually, August.
Excuse me, August 22nd.
Hope you don't have anything.
In the boardroom downstairs. We'll be taking up at that time a salary and stipend review of elected officials and multiple board members, and also Counselor Psychowski's request to exclude age 62 and over from overrides and debt exclusions. And I believe there'll be one new item of business, which I'll get to into new business.
Thank you. Does that conclude?
That concludes.
Thank you. Public Safety, Councilor McCoy.
No report tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Appointments, Councilor Winnie.
Thank you. We have 3 appointments in front of us from July 11th, and I'm going to move these in the form of a motion. We met tonight at 5:45 and reviewed the appointments, and the 3 appointments that I'm going to put forth were voted on unanimously, 3-0, for the appointment to the boards. The first one, and I'm going to make this in the form of a motion, is that Allison Murchie be appointed to the ECA Plus for the term of expiration of December 31st, 2014. Lisa Cerveni, Commission on Disability, term of expiration of December 31st, 2014. And Sean Kelly to the Industrial Development Finance Authority and Charity Fund Income Committee, both with the expiration date of December 31st, 2014.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to approve the appointments as previously stated for the 3 individuals. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Thank
All those
you.
opposed or abstaining?
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Winnie?
And then we have our 2 city appointments. The first being Barbara LeBombard, the clerk to the city council, with her expiration date of August 31st, 2014. We voted 3-0 for the reappointment in subcommittee tonight. And I'll make it in the form of a motion. And the second, well, do you want me to do these separately?
You
Or
can.
should I? Yeah, okay. So I'll make it in the form of the motion that we appoint Barbara LeBombard to the clerk to the city council with her expiration date of August 31st, 2014.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to appoint Barbara LeBombard for the position of clerk to city council, expiration date of August 31st, 2014 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Councilor Winnie?
Thank you. And the second appointment is for Mark DeMauro, our principal assessor, with his expiration date of September 5th, 2015. It was brought to my attention earlier today that Mark needed to do some more hours to update his certification, and Mark came into our meeting to tell us that he has signed up for the online course, and he'll probably have those done within the next couple weeks. So he's all set with that. It was voted in subcommittee 3-0 to reappoint Mark, and so I'll make that in the form of a motion, or I'll keep the motion off the table in case anybody has any questions. Mark is here.
Anybody have any questions for the assessor?
Okay,
Seeing none, Councilor Winnie?
thank you. Form of motion, we reappoint Mark DeMauro, principal assessor, with his expiration date of September 5th, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to reappoint Mark DeMauro for the principal assessor with an expiration date of September 5th, 2015. Any further discussion on this motion? Counselor Rist?
I just want to publicly commend Mark and the Board of Assessors for their work in resolving the issue with Our Lady of the Valley Parish. And that's a difficult issue with the parishes merging, and it sounds like it's very good for both parties. So congratulations on that.
Any further comment on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? Seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you. That's it for tonight until we get to new business with the new appointments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ordinance, Counselor Ziegler?
We tonight have one item for public hearing, that's on the bicycles. We also have, or I'd like to make a motion to set a public hearing on the signs for the rec department placing signs on public property for September 5th.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion on the table to set a public hearing for the zoning amendment, the city event temporary signage at Pulaski Park. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Counselor Ziegler.
I'm going to defer to Counselor Sikowski's request for the stretch code.
The what?
Do you have anything you'd like to say on the?
No, I think we're all set.
Okay.
There is one here that will, that's August 5th, that will expire. Could you ask for an extension?
I would definitely like to, thank you. I'd like to ask for an
90
extension.
days.
90 days for Counselor Cobb's request to review the special permitting process.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to extend the request to review the special permitting process for 90 days. Any further comment on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Okay, that motion passes.
Nothing further to report.
Okay, that concludes. Okay, property, Counselor Sikowski?
Yeah, so there's one issue on the table tonight, and that was for the Fall Street property. For Counselor Rugolevich will have the motion. We voted 2-0 this evening to go forward with it.
Okay. Counselor Ogilevitz?
I move that the city council approve a conservation restriction on approximately 22 acres of property off of Paul Street to the city of Easthampton by and through its Conservation Commission pursuant to sections 32 of chapter 184 of the general laws of Massachusetts.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for a conservation restriction on Paul Street, as read and presented tonight. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
No.
Okay, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Counselor Sikowski, you still have the floor.
That's the end of the report this evening, sir.
Thank you. We're really close. I'll actually entertain the motions to move the new business at this point. So the first one is Counselor Winnie.
Yes, Mr. President, motion to move the nomination to appointment subcommittee.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to move the mayoral appointment to appointment subcommittee for review. Any further comment on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Motion passes. Counselor Ziegler, you want to take number B?
Counselor Winnie Saza.
Counselor Winnie, please. I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to ask if I could set the appointment subcommittee meeting
Please do.
for
Okay, you're right.
September 5th at 5:45.
Just recommend that to the ordinance.
Did you get that, Barbara? For those here, the next appointments meeting will be in these chambers at 5:45, September 5th.
Thank you.
Now we have this set. We've reached 6:15. We're going to hold off. I'll take a motion to enter into the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to enter the public hearing. Counselor Hagan, you're up first.
Our first public hearing tonight, we actually opened it at the last meeting, and I did do a second reading on the matter, and we didn't get to the point, just did a quick review as a member of the CPA committee. I believe this was a unanimous motion to send this forward to the city council for funding, and was also approved by the subcommittee. We got to that point in the public hearing where we are going to ask some of the members, I know there's members of the CPA committee here that wanted to speak on it tonight, and Counselor Cobb's okay, we'll go to public speak.
Okay, before we begin, I will state that I have an appearance of conflict of interest on file with the city clerk. That will allow me to vote and participate in the discussion tonight. I'll ask other members here to disclose if they so wish before we vote on this. And I will state, because we have spoken to this before, if there's anyone here who didn't get a chance to speak last time, I'm gonna ask that they step up to the podium first on this particular issue. Did you speak last time?
Nobody's voting.
Okay. That said, I'm not really seeing anybody. If any member of the public would like to come up and speak to this issue, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Robert Harrison, 31 Ashley Circle, Easthampton. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor Hagan. No, we never got started
Okay.
on the public hearing at all. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for serving and hope you're enjoying your summer. You know, one thing I just wanted to state, I'm trying to remember what we were going to talk about 3-4 weeks ago, so I'm going to have to refer to some notes for a change, is that the Community Preservation Act, just to be clear to listeners, is a separate tax on real property owners. The city accepts that money in a separate accounts, as well as some monies at the contributions from the Commonwealth based on them raising certain monies from property sales as well. These monies cannot be intermingled or part or any substitute for school budgets or city operating budgets. They're separate and distinct and have very limited ways that it can be spent. We're very fortunate in Easthampton since fiscal year 2003, finished first year collections. I believe we're in the $4 million range already that we've been able to collect from both sources and have used for multiple projects. So I just wanted to give a little background as far as how CPA goes. Now, the committee evaluated a request by Riverside Industries for a historical preservation related support at their request and participation in what they define as a Windows of Opportunity project. Some of you may have seen their booklet. They seek to replace all 912 pane glass windows at a cost estimate of $1.135 million, and to do this over a year. It's not they're not trying to lay this out over multiple years. I have a few, again, my comments are on behalf of the committee, and I know there are individuals here representing Riverside as well as others that may want to fill in some details for you, so I'm hoping I won't say too much. I did provide all counselors, and again, this may have been about 2 months ago, with a small package which noted our recommendation of $300,000 to assist the project, and it was very clear stipulating that all window work must comply with the United States Department of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. We were very careful about making sure windows are not just windows. There's very clear guidelines here. And the package, and I hope, again, 2 months ago is a while, I hope you all did take a look at it. It included 9 letters of very distinct support. Those letters were from Mayor Tausnig, Senator Knappich, Representative Syback, our former city planner, Mr. Beckley, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, the Easthampton Helping Hands Society, the campaign Windows of Opportunity Campaign Vice Chair, Mr. David Boyle, President of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Pat Bruff, and what I consider most importantly, and it came in last at our request, was the Easthampton Historical Commission. And also included some things about the budget and the fundraising plan that they had. So that didn't want to overwhelm you with paperwork, but that's what you should have seen. We had over several meetings. A number of other community members did attend and spoke to us in support of the request, and they included such individuals as the president of Easthampton Savings Bank, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Fran Root was very supportive and vocal about it. Some tenants of the building joined us at a meeting. Mr. Maziarz, I think the name was, former owner of 15 Cottage, which is another building, and it's actually part of this central project here. And Riverside Industries president, development officer, and their building manager. Now, the committee concluded, and this is after we decided that this request met all of our general criteria for any applicant. We concluded with an opinion that the project is fully eligible and what we say important enough for the city of Easthampton to offer city participation of the full requested $300,000, and we in fact voted 7-0 in favor of doing that, to bring it to your attention. There's a lot of other facts and information, but I'll stop there and move to someone else unless you have a question of myself. But thank you I hope you'll give this full consideration.
Any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Harrison? Councilor Rist.
Yes, Mr. Harrison, is funding of the CPA, is grants and other funding that will add to this project contingent on CPA funding? In other words, if we don't pass this, then this fails completely because the other grants won't come in.
Okay, we are the only public funding source for this particular project. Unless, if something's changed, you'll hear that, but we are the only public funding source. Everything else are donors like you and I, local businesses. Some of it's spelled out in the budget plan. I happen to be aware, and I can't speak to it, that there are monies waiting to the side. And I like to use the word, I know we've leveraged lots of CPA and I believe that's part of your question, with other grants. So I like to use the word that some of these other donations, which will be quite large, were somewhat leveraged because they are looking to see what the city's going to do and just how
So there
active
is-
we are in this. But we are the only public source.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Harrison?
Just one quick, Bob, this doesn't leave the CPA, I mean, I know the figures because you've given it to
sure.
me, but this doesn't leave the CPA short in funding, correct? We still have, if there's other projects that were to come up, there's sufficient funding. I don't know if you have the figures with you.
Yeah,
I mean, I have the latest
sure.
one, yeah, but if you want to
No.
just give them, I think, to council, just so they know what's in the.
No, great question.
No, they
We're,
were in the accounts would be helpful.
And this is why this committee is the best committee to serve on, because we have money to spend, okay? So please, volunteers are always welcome. Councilor Hagan, after, if this in fact is approved, the $300,000 is designated out of Historical Preservation Fund balance as well as General Fund balance. With what the city auditor and the city treasurer have certified as available monies, even after this appropriation, we would be in excess of $700,000 still available to talk to people. And we have very little in the pipeline right now. So that number can only be higher than $700,000 once the fiscal year ends and more monies come in from the Commonwealth in October, which is just around the corner. And the city auditor, through DOR, certifies that we have other available funds. So it's just a growing dollar amount. It's not going to put us in any hurtful or concerned position at all.
Thank you. Councilor McCoy.
Mr. Harrison, so this appropriation will take out the 150 from historical preservation, is that correct? That's where.
Yeah, and actually that particular account has increased another 51,000 subsequent to all of this happening, because fiscal year end, the auditor and the finance director makes the 10% annual allocation to the 3 sub-accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So housing before this action is actually not 156,000, it's like 207,000. The reason we have done this with all projects, we like to use up the 10% because they are very specific. They can't be touched otherwise. So the smartest move on our part with money, in case that real big one comes along someday, like an Echodale Farm or the pond, which was $600,000, we won't say, oh my God, we've got all our money in sub-accounts and that's not applicable, so we can't spend it. So I think we've wisely tried to spend it down as quickly as we can. Does that answer your question?
I guess my
Or
point,
did
so
I add you too much?
it sounds like there is still money left in the historical preservation, but even if you used up, let's say there was only 150, it doesn't preclude movement from the general CPA fund to fill in if a project came forward that was under the historical preservation.
That's
there
correct.
would be
If we had-
money for that.
Correct. If we had $1 left over tomorrow in historical preservation, and we had just a project that we were all drooling about that came forward that would involve historical preservation, we would have, $500,000 to put not a problem at all.
Any further questions for Mr. Harrison? Councilor?
The Commonwealth, shouldn't they just expand what the expenditures get money on?
Yeah, actually just in the last couple of weeks.
Do you see a demand from those other departments, the parks, people coming in looking for more money?
We've already had inquiries this week, and
Okay.
I can foresee that's what a good part of our business is gonna be over the next year. And I believe it's a good thing. Some of
No,
the projects that, we, like every community, made errors in the real technical part of the law by funding part of the baseball hub or the or the Green Street playgrounds, things like this. Every community made these mistakes. And one particular community an individual filed a lawsuit and said you shouldn't be spending money on recreational projects on land you already own. So that's what the legislature's been dealing with for a good 3 or 4 years now. They finally said, no, it doesn't make any sense. How could you spend your money? You'd have to go out and buy new land. That didn't make any sense. We foresee that that's exactly what's gonna happen, as we're talking now. Little League and the soccer leagues are going to work with Park and Rec Commission and see if they can start doing some things with Nonotuck Park. And CPA wants to hear that.
That's a good thing.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Harrison? Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other member of the public who would like to step forward and speak to this issue? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is Genevieve Bruff and I live at 107 Brick Street, and that is my daughter Katie. I am here to speak on behalf of Riverside Industries and in favor of the distribution of the CPA funds to their window replacement project. As a lifelong resident of Easthampton, I have watched our downtown area grow over the past 40 years. We have an opportunity with these funds to update the face of a cornerstone building in Easthampton. A building that has survived many changes and has flourished under the guardianship of this nonprofit organization. Riverside Industries has maintained this historic building to the best of its abilities with a limited budget for the past 36 years. These CPA funds will fulfill a crucial need in maintaining the integrity of our downtown district. I am also fortunate to be a business owner here in Easthampton. As a business owner, I recognize the vital role that One Cottage Street plays in the economy of Easthampton. Riverside Industries employs over 150 people who generate economic activity in our city. One Cottage Street is also home to a vibrant and nationally recognized arts program, which encourages the culture of our city. This arts community draws people from all over the valley and New England. This type of exposure benefits everyone who owns a business in Easthampton. Riverside is truly an organization that is a gift to the city of Easthampton. I strongly encourage the City Council to vote in favor of Riverside Industries receiving the CPA funds earmarked by the CPA Committee and by your Finance Committee. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to step forward and speak to this issue? Please step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Silas Kopp. I'm a property owner here in town. I own the old firehouse at 84 Union Street. And I have worked here in the arts community for since 1978, and I was a tenant at Riverside Industries for the first 20 years of my career here in town. Happy to be in my own building now, but I love the work that they're doing at One Cottage Street. And I think that we should all recognize that Easthampton has become a magnet for arts, not just in New England, as she just mentioned, but nationally. People want to come here, they want to live here because we have this vital community going on here. And it's adding significantly to the economic vitality of the whole town. There is a lot of spin-off that comes, restaurants coming in, coffee shops, etc. I think because the arts community is here. And Riverside has been the incubator for that particular group of people for all of those years. Now we have other buildings in town, but Riverside has been, we're the ones who stepped forward first and had that vision to see that the arts could become an important thing here in town. So I want to see that continue. I want to see them work as stewards to carry on with that, and having that building in good functioning order is only going to make it more of an attractive thing for people to come and join. The other thing that I want to talk about is architectural preservation, and I did get involved with restoring the firehouse or making it into a new entity. And one of the first things that the architect told me when I sat down with him about renovating the building was, you have to make it energy efficient. That's number one. And so putting those, I redid windows in my building, and putting new windows in that particular building will make it viable long-term. It's going to make it an attractive and useful building long into the future. And it's such an important building in town here. It's right down in the middle of things, and we need to see it preserved. So I hope you'll look favorably upon this proposal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who'd like to come forward and speak to this issue? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, hi, David Boyle, 146 Holyoke Street. I'm the campaign vice chair. I sent out some notes, but I just want to say something different briefly. Last week I had the pleasure that my vacation, I took a woodworking class at 1 Cottage Street during the week. So I was in the building all week from 8 to 5. And where the New England Architectural School is, one half has new windows and one half has old windows. So during the day, you can see the difference. You know, the sun comes over, and fortunately, the sun at the end of the day is hitting the new windows, so it's not quite as harsh. But I also had the luxury of being an anonymous person in the building and kind of being able to wander around a little bit and see where windows are desperately needed and see where they've been done and see what's going on there. And it just drove home what I think a lot of people know, that it's a good project. Energy efficiency is, you know, talked about, but unfortunately, you know, solar and wind are, they're not as effective as the low-hanging fruit as windows and insulation. And, you know, if you can keep in what you have, you know, I mean, someday we're going to have solar, you know, that's, you know, more, you know, cost feasible, but at the moment we don't. And I just think that this is a good project, and I think it's a win-win. And I don't want to repeat what anyone else said, but I do think it's a win-win. And thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public who'd like to come forward and speak to this issue? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Fran Root, Hendrick Street. I didn't come prepared to speak, but I feel I would not be doing my job if I didn't. I am on the board of directors at Riverside. Deb Thomas is the president, and she's not here tonight because she just had surgery. I know I'm very prejudiced, but I'm not sure what I'm prejudiced for, because I've got 3 kids. One is a special ed teacher in Maine. One works behind me here in this office, and one is a Down syndrome young man, 40 years old. I want to just put out 2 words tonight. One is quintessential, which took me a long time to figure out what the heck that means, and the other one is DA. Well, I believe that this project is the quintessential use of CPA funds. It is the purest example that I can think of as a taxpayer in the city of Easthampton for using CPA funds. When I was asked to be on this committee, the first person I went to was Stuart to see if it was feasible to use, and he said no. He said, but wait a minute, let me check. So he went on the computer, and he says, yeah, Fran, it is. He says there's absolute. He said there may be some question about the type of windows that are used, but other than that, it's a go. So from there, and one letter that you don't have, or that Bob didn't mention, is I also talked to the current city planner, and she said that she would be sending you all a letter in full support of the full $300,000. So if you haven't, I think it's just lost in the mail maybe. The other word is DA. That's what my son used to call me. It took him many years before he could put that final D on my name to get me to be called Dad. Okay, for a long time it was Da. Now, theoretically, we could take the funds for this project out of our operating expenses, but that would be $1 million that we don't have to pay for the services that Riverside provides to people like my son. I think the community should step up with this request, and I think it's a fantastic use of CPA funds. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public who'd like to step forward and speak to this issue? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Shar Gentes. I am a resident of Easthampton, live at 7 Cherry Street. I am also the Director of Community Relations and the Acting President at Riverside. Thank you everyone who spoke on behalf of the campaign and the project, and thank you for your time and energy of listening to all of us. There's many things I could say about the project, and there are a few things I would just like to read and then add a few others. First, Riverside is very delighted and appreciative of Bob and the entire CPA committee for the unanimous support of this project. We're very appreciative of that, and we appreciate the recognition that the CPA has given to the historic value of One Cottage Street and the many benefits which the building provides to the city. The location of One Cottage Street makes it a gateway to the city. This project will help preserve the historic face of Easthampton and enhance the beauty of downtown. The project also recognizes the role Riverside and One Cottage Street play as boosters of the local economy through staffing. Somebody said 150 people. Services to the community, people who are living with developmental disabilities and other disabilities. We provide that service. And being an incubator, which Silas spoke to, of small businesses and a vibrant arts community. Riverside and One Cottage Street support Easthampton and draw many visitors to the city. As a resident of Easthampton, I was out for a bike ride the other day, and I went by One Ferry Street. And for a moment I thought, oh God, what's the difference between One Ferry Street and One Cottage Street? And that has been, One Cottage Street has a champion. That champion has been Riverside Industries for 36 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars has been put into that building to maintain it, to provide a community service for people with developmental disabilities, and to provide a home for people like Silas, who have brought such energy and vitality to the community and the arts community. We have a strong commitment to the arts community. We've been providing low rental for many, many years. And we are particularly happy to be at One Cottage Street because this community has welcomed us, has welcomed the people who we provide services to openly, and has allowed us to do our mission in a way that we probably couldn't do in any other area, because we are part of this community. We are the members of this community, and we are so appreciative of that. This community has supported us in so many, many ways, through our auction, in so many ways. We are now looking for a champion with this contract, with this project. The CPA has stepped up to be that champion. We are now asking you to support their decision and to vote favorably. We feel that this investment will be apparent for years to come. Thank you very much for your time, for your energy. Any questions you have for me, I'm more than willing.
Any questions from the councilors? Hearing none?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll offer it up one more time. If any there's new speakers who'd like to come forward to speak to this issue. Seeing none, Councilor Hagan.
I'd just like to comment on myself on the whole process. I think that this, going back to a little what Mr. Root said, not that all the speakers didn't say stuff, but I did think that this was a win in several ways for the city. I thought it was obviously our main concern are the main appropriations for historic preservation, and this is definitely a historic building, and I think it you know, that is our prime thing, but it also takes in the energy aspects of that building, and it takes in the business aspect of it being located right in the center of downtown, and I just think in the work that Shar had given me a tour during this process of One Cottage, and I just wholeheartedly would support the measure.
Okay. Would you like to, is there any other questions from any of the councilors? Councilor Psychowski?
I would just like to say, I always have quite a bit of problem voting for CPA projects. But this issue here, I'm gonna vote for this for the simple reason, Riverside Industries does a lot of good for some very disadvantaged children and adults. And my heart goes out to them, and I think this is something that we should support. I think this is a lot better supporting this than open space, believe me. Thank you.
Okay. Council Winnie?
I'm gonna abstain from the vote. As I said at the last meeting, my daughter is an employee at Riverside Industries, so it's a conflict of interest for me to vote. But as it's not on the table right now, I just wanna make one comment. I've lived in Easthampton my whole life. My grandparents moved here from Waltham, and my parents were both raised here. And I just, as I'm looking at the building, and I said to Chet, and I just said, it just came to me that preservation of this building is the resurrection of our downtown, and the two go hand in hand. So if I could vote on this, I would definitely support it. But it's so vital that it's just right down there in the center of town, and again, the preservation is the resurrection. So I'll leave it at that.
Before we have a motion, Councilman McCoy, you want to disclose?
Sure, I was going to do it in the motion, but yes, I guess attest to the involvement of Riverside Industries with our community. I am actually a tenant there, and so made 2 calls actually to the Ethics Commission, and both times because I literally write a check to Riverside Industries every month. They suggested it would be very tough to explain that it's not being some kind of conflict of interest, so their recommendation was for me to abstain on this vote, which I will. And I guess technically I'm supposed to be very neutral, but pleased with the way the discussions have gone. I'll leave it like that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for the counselor on this request? Seeing none, would you like, I'll entertain a motion?
Just a point of order before I make the motion. I am gonna add a sentence to the purpose as is followed in the original appropriation. And do you want me to put it in the form of a motion as it originally states and then make an amended motion, or just make the motion as a motion?
Make the motion.
I hereby would like to make the following motion for approval of following appropriation in the amount of $300,000 to be appropriated from the CPA Historic Preservation Fund in the amount of $150,000, and from the CPA General Fund in the amount of $150,000 to be appropriated to the Riverside Windows Project in the amount of $300,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to assist Riverside Industries' effort to replace windows at 1 Cottage Street, with the stipulation that all work must comply with the standards of rehabilitation as laid out in the U.S. Secretary of the Interior Standards for the Treatment of Historic Properties.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to recommend approval of the supplemental appropriation request, $300,000, as presented tonight. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
The abstentions, please note.
Abstain.
Any objections? Motion passes. Am I correct? Thank you very much. Next item, Council Ziegler, Chapter 3 bicycles.
This has been continued from the last public hearing because Councilman Derby was unable to attend. However, with Councilman Derby absent again tonight, I would like to open the public hearing, and I think that we should move forward, and I will ask for a motion following the public hearing.
Okay, that said, we did entertain a large amount of correspondence and communication on this already. If there's any new members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak on this, I'll entertain them first. Seeing none, if anyone would like to come up to the podium and speak to this issue, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Please come up to the podium, please.
Might I ask one question? Is there negative commentary to which I might speak, but I have not yet seen?
If you come to the podium, you're welcome to ask that question, and we'll address it.
Sorry to break the rules.
Did they open?
Okay.
Okay, this is Ralph Sturgeon, 11 Elliott Street, Easthampton. I spoke in favor of the new ordinances last time. I have nothing more to say in favor, but I would ask that if there has been negative comments made or brought forward that might be shared with me, that maybe I might speak to them in rebuttal.
Any of the councilors have anything they'd like to ask?
Well, it wasn't so much asked, but to answer your question, there were some concerns that were raised. Some of those concerns, the negative concerns, have really just been addressed because the intention of putting this forward was to update and bring things in alignment with, Mass General Law 85, Section 11B. The concerns were more specific of why were we taking out safety precautions such as reflectors or some other language when in fact it's not so much that we're removing it, but it's just already in line with the Massachusetts general law. So it wasn't any overarching negativity towards the
In that
proposal.
case, I won't bore anybody with saying the same things.
I do have some.
Yes.
I have gone through a document in detail. I have a number of concerns. The first one starts right with the definition. The definition, as you read it now, can actually be spelled out as a skateboard. Even though we're talking bicycles, I need to be clear that that definition isn't broad enough in my mind to actually assess that. There were also a bunch of minor little things in the current presentation that concern me that I'm hoping that we can address, make some notes, is in the section 3.17 where it talked about the restricted usage. I noted, well, what about utility vehicles on the Manhattan Rail Trail? What do they qualify as? And I noticed that the footnote that used to be in this section has been removed, which allowed some flexibility by permit from the select board. And I had a number of other things which actually boiled down to one major comment, in that I looked at what we did with the building codes, where we added a couple of small items, very specific, and thought, why aren't we doing that with this bicycle ordinance? Why aren't we going with adopting the state regulations and then adding, for the point of discussion, a definition and the downtown business streets as part of our ordinance, so that as the state law changes, our ordinance automatically updates. And those are things I will be asking. If you would like to address them, you can, but I will be asking them later on.
As to the first one, the restricted use, that wording, everything about the Manhattan Trail came from the Manhattan Trail Committee.
Okay.
That was submitted directly by them, and I would try to answer anything, since my wife happens to be on the committee and we've discussed it, but I may not be the best one to answer that. To your last point, I believe the counselors on the committee may recall that the first words out of my mouth when we talked about this whole thing was, why are we doing this? We have the state law. The state law basically, one, does not address the Manhattan Trail, therefore that's for us to address in the city. And the state law requires us to define the downtown business district for purposes of promoting pedestrian safety by limiting bicycle riding on the sidewalk. To my personal mind, and this I believe I said to the counselors at the start, those are the only two things we should have. That everything else has been addressed by the state, does not need us to address it separately, and maybe we really can't, we may not be legally allowed to contradict state law when the legislature has acted on a question.
Okay. I do have another one, one of the concerns here that I noted, and it was in one of the definitions. It was section 3-38, and it was the word down the bottom there, number B, where it's now just been reduced to, which I like the idea that we're trying to simplify the language. Trailers and seats that are designed for transporting children are permitted. The word design, without qualifying it with some kind of standard, in my worldview, can run us into problems. I don't know how anybody else feels, but that one didn't make me warm and fuzzy. when the state regulations actually specify a certain standard for
Okay.
some of those things.
I can't necessarily, it may not be my place to answer
I don't
why
think you
that
can,
was
but, yeah.
simplified that much. I believe from our discussions with the committee that the desire was to simplify things as much as possible. You will also note that the helmet regulation, the helmet ordinance
I was actually glad to see that
does
one.
not specify the standards which it must meet.
Yep.
And my personal feeling is both of those, I just defer to the state law and question why we should even have that section in the ordinances.
Okay. Because this is a public hearing, what I'll do, if you have any other questions from any of the counselors, or if not, I'll allow other people who'd like to come forward and speak to this to step up to the podium and
Thank you, sir.
address the council on this. Since we have spoke, I'm going to limit the discussion to 3 minutes. If you got a blurb you want to come up and speak to, or if you want to address the questions that were already brought up, that's okay too. Just please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eli Damon. I live at 14 Ward Avenue, and I already spoke some about this last time, about some things that I liked about the recommendation, and some things that I did not. And I basically I agree with what the other speakers said as well, and I guess one thing I'd also like to talk about is the process by which this recommendation came to be. It's unusual for the public to participate in the drafting of ordinances, and so I appreciate the committee entertaining this new kind of process. At the same time, there are some things that I'm dissatisfied with. So I'm sorry. So, I mean, I believe that I'm kind of a minimalist when it comes to laws. I believe there should only be a law when it is the best solution for a compelling problem, all right, and that fact should be demonstrated by some kind of reasoning and evidence. And I was frustrated during the discussions that it seemed we were trying to put in language in the ordinances to solve a problem that no one could really show actually existed. And the other thing is that I was expecting the chief of police to participate in the conversation. I was disappointed that he did not, except that apparently he issued an opinion, but he did not issue it publicly with any kind of supporting reasoning or anything, which means that I, as a member of the public, cannot critique it. And I feel that it's somewhat anti-democratic for a public official to be influencing legislation without that influence being out in the open where it can be critiqued. So I guess that's all I have to say, in addition to what I said last time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public would like to come forward and speak to this issue? Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Tim Carey, Plain Street. Just want to speak briefly in support of the ordinance. I'm a commuter between here and Amherst, and my feeling on the ordinance is it should match the state law as much as possible to avoid confusion between both me as a cyclist and any officers. I've had an encounter with a couple of officers in neighboring towns, and it's just confusing between the town or city's bylaws and the state bylaws. So I really appreciate all the work the subcommittee's done on this, and I support this.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to come forward and speak to this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to make one final comment. What you heard from me in my brief statements was I truly believe that, well, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I think this needs some fine tuning before we actually come up with a formal proposal for the council. You're welcome to disagree. That's a democratic process. I will turn the table over to Councilor Ziegler first, because he still has the floor, to determine if he still wants to go forward with the discussion and vote tonight.
Well, I do believe that Mr. Derby, excuse me, Councilman Derby had a lot of input and had a lot to do with some of the drafting of the language here and recognizing some of your concerns, specifically about the skateboard. I would move to continue the public hearing to September 5th.
Okay.
I propose a motion to move, that we continue the public hearing until September 5th.
Is that a motion, or you're gonna make a motion?
I'm making the motion right now.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to continue this public hearing till September 5th, 2012. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Rist?
Yes, Councilor Cobb, believe it or not, I agree with you that there needs to be fine tuning. I really do always support the work, the hard work of our ordinance committee, and they've worked very hard on this. What concerns me is the gentleman mentioned that apparently state law does not deal with the Manhattan Rail Trail or wants the business district defined with regard to bicycles. But when you have state law specifically addressing part of what's in this ordinance, in my opinion, we should, for the purpose of helping our residents who might come to want to know about the bicycle law, we should duplicate, not necessarily the entire law, but duplicate the main parts of that language. And I refer to the definition, as you mentioned, because the definition which deals with pedals in bicycles is quite clear, would eliminate skateboards. And I don't know why that definition had to be revised. In fact, I think it's confusing when it does, and maybe Councilor Ziegler can address it. Or I would ask the committee to, one, address only those issues that duplicate state law and use the language in state law so there's no confusion between our ordinance and that language, because we cannot override state law. And if just to use the skateboard example, a police officer decided to get a skateboard off of the Manhattan Rail Trail, our law doesn't disallow that, but state law does, I guess, so there's a confusion there. So I'd like to recommend the ordinance committee look at the language's confusion between state law and our own ordinance. And I really like the fact that it's streamlined, but whatever we put in that is addressed by state law should mimic it, should duplicate it. At least in a paraphrased way, so it doesn't seem to eliminate what the intent. And I think that skateboard issue is an example, and the rest of it. So I would like to ask the ordinance committee to look at that and see if they could look at state law versus our ordinance and make the languages match a little better if it's necessary.
Any members on this side would like to speak to the issue? Councilor Hagan?
I would go again with a motion to continue it for a vote. I appreciate what you brought up about the skateboard issue. The one I had, just so that I get it on the table, because I will bring it up at the next time in the voting, and it goes a little what Councilor Rist just said, is I understand the need for bicycles to go on the sidewalk in certain areas of town. I mean, in Precinct 1, Northampton Street, I don't know, that's a dangerous place to ride a bicycle out on that state highway, and certainly you can use the sidewalks. But by the same token, some of those sidewalks are less than 2 feet wide and within a curb's width from the road itself. And what's proposed in here about bicycles on the sidewalk says that they be appropriate in their speed, and they stay to the right and allow for the safe yielding to others. But I guess I look at what the state law says, and to me, once you go on a sidewalk, the burden now becomes to the bicyclist, not to the pedestrian. And the state law reads, that the bicycle, if he rides on a sidewalk, will yield the right of way to pedestrians and give an audible signal before overtaking or passing any pedestrian. And, you know, I've been surprised myself walking on that street of somebody coming up behind you, and they don't do it intentionally, but a bicycle comes up and, you know, it can you know, they just kind of go around you or go up on the grass around you. And, you know, a lot of the senior citizens walk, and I just think that that part should still stay in the law if we're gonna allow them on sidewalks, to make it very specific that if bicycles are gonna get on a sidewalk, that the pedestrians have the right of way, not the bicycles. And if it means they have to stop and get off their bicycle and walk it around a senior citizen who's in the middle of the sidewalk, so be it. So that would be the one aspect I'd like to see changed before the final thing. But I do applaud the committee. I think it's something that's, you know, it's a lot of work, and I think to narrow it down and get it to, you know, in a more condensed form would be helpful. And I do want to say that.
Councilor Psychowski.
I was gonna say something else, but Counselor Hagan, you just brought up a good thing here. Are you suggesting that in the ordinance that we have, where every bicycle in town has a bell on it so they can signal to everybody? I think, when I was a kid, we had to have one or we couldn't get our bikes.
Well, it does say signal. I don't know.
I think it'd be a good
It says you
idea.
can't have a horn
Thank
or
you
a-
for the
It
idea.
says you can't have a horn or a siren, but I do think that you should make yourself known if you're coming up
Right.
behind a pedestrian, whether
Thank
it's
you.
by a bell.
Okay, any other further comments before we vote on the motion to continue the hearing? Seeing none, all those in
Second
favor?
it?
Excuse me?
Yes, I did.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objection? Motion is voted, motion approved. I will suggest that if any counselor has any amendments or suggestions, please forward those to the committee so they can discuss them, and I encourage the, if they have a meeting between now and then, to actually attend and participate in the discussion. Thank you.
I have a question. I mean, since it's being continued, Councilor Ziegler, is there a date for potential more meeting before the 5th, more discussion? Or can't you make that without Councilor Derby?
I don't think that we'd be able to do that with Councilor Derby being on vacation, so.
Okay.
I would actually, I was gonna say, like to make a motion then, propose a motion to continue it for 90 days. I mean, we're gonna definitely need more time than.
Or continue it to the second meeting. Continue it to the second meeting, the public hearing to the second meeting in
Okay.
September. Would that work?
That would.
I will ask for our parliamentarian rules to speak to this. What we have is, we have a motion saying we're gonna continue it to September 5th. Now you want a motion to continue it even longer. Do we have to
Well,
remove the
Are you
previous
talking
motion?
about
So
the
we're-
agenda item?
Well, that's what I'm looking at then, because, again, when we look at the agenda item, it was for public hearing for tonight, but again, we're not going to have any of these questions that have been brought up resolved by September 5th. So although we had the motion, it was approved to move it to September 5th, I just think that I would hate to have people come back again on September 5th and have similar questions, and knowing full well that we're not going to be ready to address them on September 5th.
Would this be a reconsideration?
No, all he has to do is, one, make a motion to extend the agenda item for 90 days, and two, request that the public hearing be continued to the meeting on the 19th of September, if my mathematics is correct. So if you make those two motions, I think that satisfies everything.
It would override the first motion.
And the other motion is therefore
Yep.
amended. The 19th is
Sorry,
necessary, so you can make two motions.
Okay, did all the members hear that and concur? Okay, that said, please state your motion.
I'd like to motion that we extend the agenda item for Chapter 3 bicycles for 90 days.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to extend the proposal to amend City Ordinance Chapter 3 bicycles for 90 days. Any more discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? None?
And I would also like to motion that we extend the public hearing from this evening until September 19th, the September 19th meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to continue the public hearing on this issue to September 19th. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Councilor Ziegler, you still have the floor.
I'm finished.
That concludes? Okay. Next item, Councilor Rist.
Thank you. Before us is the proposal to approve Administrative Code 12-1, which deals with establishing procedures governing the appointment of 2 members of the Board of Directors for the Public Library Association. The Rules Committee met on this agenda and approved it 3-0. What we are being asked to approve is the appointment of 2 members by the mayor with the approval of the City Council, who will act as our oversight, as you would, or a check for the city and its tax dollars to the Library Association. And these 2 members of the Board of Directors, as I'll read here, will be expected to attend semi-annual meetings of the corporation, periodic meetings of the Board of Directors, and monthly meetings of the Executive Committee of the Public Library Association of Easthampton. In addition, said directors are charged with providing information and insight to the mayor, the city council, and the citizens of Easthampton with regards to the workings of the Public Library Association of Easthampton and its relationship with the city and the citizens of Easthampton. That alone, the committee and I felt was very important and actually very appropriate, considering that the city's tax dollars are in play. And as I said, we approved it 3-0.
Okay, any members of the public who would like to come speak to this issue, please step forward to the podium. Hearing none, Mayor Mike, would you like to address it?
Yeah, this is the result of an agreement that we reached with the executive committee. And so this is the step that puts our piece in place. There are still issues to deal with, and we're trying to work through that. At the moment, there is no board of directors for this corporation, which is a violation of their articles of incorporation, but we'll continue to try to work through that. But this step is necessary. There'll be a letter going out to the corporators probably next week, asking them to consider adopting a board of directors as required under their articles of incorporation. And the funding, the continued funding of the library is going to be contingent upon the corporation meeting the needs of the city and creating the entities that are necessary to meet the agreement that we've reached with their executive committee. So this is an important step, and it's necessary for us to kind of follow through with this, making this harder connection to the library between the city and the library.
Okay. Any questions for the counselor or for the mayor while we have him here? Seeing none, Councilor Rist.
Okay, I move that pursuant to Chapter 6-1B of the Easthampton Home Rule Charter, the City of Easthampton hereby establishes procedures governing the appointment of 2 members of the Board of Directors of the Public Library Association of Easthampton in accordance with Administrative Code 12-1.
Second.
Would you repeat that, please? Or let me see it. I just want to read it.
Sure.
I'll actually read it again because it's currently right here in the paragraph. We have on the table a motion to approve Administrative Code 12-1 pursuant to the Easthampton Home Rule Charter, Section 6-1B. The City of Easthampton hereby establishes procedures governing the appointment of 2 members to the Board of Directors of the Public Library Association of Easthampton. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Councilor Psychowski.
Are those people going to be allowed to vote at the Library Association meetings, or are they just going to be there to observe?
Councilor Riz, can you address that?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer right on top. I'm trying to read through the document that was presented to us.
We have a motion on the table, so I can't ask the mayor to address it, but if you look at him and he shakes his head.
I'm gonna look at it.
We can get through it.
I'll try to find the answer, but I don't believe they have the right to vote unless they're elected as members of the Board of Directors. But I will move to remove it's an important question, I'll remove the motion temporarily. If the second will also remove it, allow the mayor to answer the question.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been removed temporarily. Mayor Mike?
The expectation is they'll be voting members of the board of directors. They will not be corporators, nor will they be officers. But it's also expected that they will be welcomed to attend any formal meeting of the corporation or of the officers unless they go into executive session about an issue that doesn't relate to the relationship to the city. But they will be voting members of the board of directors, so they would be expected to be allowed to vote on any action that the board votes on. And in a corporation, the board of directors votes on the officers and on the disposition of the corporation, the corporate assets. So they would have a meaningful role in the board of directors. But as I said, this particular corporation doesn't act within the articles of incorporation. So we have to work through that. It's going to be a process. There's still some resistance amongst people that are associated with this corporation. There's a lot of people on the corporation that are interested in improving this relationship.
Okay.
And I'm trying not to create any
Does that answer your
big waves.
question,
No,
Councilor
it didn't
Sadowski?
quite answer. When you started talking about the finances, I can understand the town finances, but they will have no vote on the endowment, right?
They are, according to the agreement.
Only maybe because the endowment is entirely separate, right?
You done?
Michael, you always interrupt me,
may
so
I
I don't
answer?
have a problem interrupting you.
Okay.
Let's keep it civil, guys. There was a break in the quorum of debate. Address your questions through me.
They are
Please answer the
expected to
question.
be voting members of the board of directors. So anything the board votes on, they would be expected to be allowed to be voted on, whatever the subject is.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilor Psychowski?
Yes, but I mean, I didn't have that piece of paper, so I'm trying to get caught up here this evening.
You didn't get it. This was handed out then.
Okay. That said, are there any
Wait,
further
no.
questions for the mayor?
I'll get
You
that.
want it, all right.
Excuse me? Are there any further questions for the mayor? None said? Councilor Riss, would you like to get
I'll
the motion?
restate the
in?
motion. I move pursuant to Section 6(1)B of the Easthampton Home Rule Charter. The City of Easthampton hereby establishes procedures governing the appointment of 2 members of the Board of Directors of the Public Library Association of Easthampton in accordance with Administrative Code 12-1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, as previously stated. Are there any further comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
I'm gonna abstain for the simple reason, I didn't have that thing to do my homework with.
That's
Thank you.
appropriate. Any objections? Okay, that said, motion passes. Thank you.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Any comment on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or objections? Motion passes. We have some new business left. Counselor Ziegler, we have one item to move to ordinance.
I was going to motion that we move the request from the planning board to amend zoning ordinance section 11.12 to the subcommittee, ordinance subcommittee.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to recommend moving the request from the planning board to amend the zoning ordinance, section 11-12 to ordinance for review. Are there any questions on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? That said, Counselor Hagan, you got the last item.
There's been a appropriation request from the mayor through the, by way of the CPA committee. I'll do a first reading and then ask that it be moved to finance. Hereby, the request is hereby made for the approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested, $200,000 to be appropriated from CPA Housing Fund in the amount of $150 and CPA General Fund in the amount of $50,000 to be appropriated to the Cottage Street Affordable Housing in the amount of $200,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to provide support for the development of affordable housing at the former Dye Works building.
Second. Oh, that was a motion, right?
Did you want?
Okay, we have a motion on the table to move this
To finance.
to finance for review. Any further comment on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Okay, motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the table to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have to sign the CPA.
Don't, Don, don't leave.
Don't leave, Don, we need you.